ready?
Yes.
Welcome to Murder Talk Radio.
I'm Victoria Evans.
I'm Parker Evans.
And today we're talking about the problem with Steve Albini. We are both musicians. That's actually how we met. And and we're both huge fans of Steve Albini. And he actually got me a Cattle and Bread harmonic percolator as a gift.
It's actually the Karma Suture. It's a copy of the harmonic percolator.
Right, yeah. But one of my favorite pedals, that was a wonderful gift from my husband. There are a lot of people who have a problem with Steve, or with the fact that we're criticizing Steve Albini. So Steve Albini is a legendary...
Can I just real quick?
Yeah.
We're doing this in support of... I've been working on this, trying to develop this story for over a year, about a year and a half. I had a source who talked to me about this issue a year and a half ago, and I've been working on it ever since. I did not expect Steve Albini to die at 61, as I'm sure Steve Albini did not expect to die at 61. But since he died, I put the story out, and it started to go viral. It's got about 3,000 reads just in the 24 hours that it's been out. And it's gotten a lot of undue criticism. And so that's what made us decide to do this live Murder Talk Radio this morning. We want to do more of these lives anyway, and this seemed like a good opportunity to start. So,
yeah, this is super unfortunate for us. It's kind of heartbreaking because we're such big fans of Steve Albini. He is a legendary punk rock musician and audio engineer and producer from Chicago. His studio is Electrical Audio, and he's mostly known for his bands Big Black and Shellac of North America, and he has worked with so many different bands. Most people mainly know Nirvana and the Melvins.
You forgot about his band Rape Man.
Right, getting to that one. So Steve Albini is known for his edgelording, basically just being as offensive as humanly possible. And when you're known for doing that, he has a band called Rape Man, which is based off of a manga called Rape Man. So when you're known for that, I don't even know how to segue this, but he essentially, what we're going to discuss is his career, and then ultimately people that he has surrounded himself with. And there are two of them who are pedophiles. One is in prison right now, and the other one is...
The other one was the very first person who was ever convicted under the child pornography laws, which were passed in the United States in the late 70s. He was convicted in the early 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah.
But he was the very first person who was ever tried under those laws. Before we get into that, though, I have kind of a lead in. One of the things that Albini was known for, and it's an element of his kind of edgelording, he never actually, that I'm aware of, called himself a communist or a socialist outright. But one of the things that he's very famous for is he refused to take any points, royalties, on any of the albums that he worked on. Most engineers or producers, they get a percentage, 2%, 3%, 5%, usually not that high. Although for somebody with his stature, he might have been able to get 5%. And, he worked on In Utero. He worked on, I think, Razor Blade Suitcase for Bush. And essentially he turned down millions and millions of dollars, which had a really negative impact on his business. He frequently spoke about his business being his studio, Electrical Audio, being on the brink of disaster, bankruptcy. He spoke publicly about having to pay his payroll, his employees, with money that he won playing poker He's a two-time World Series of Poker gold bracelet winner champion. He won about $200,000, I think, both times.
Yeah.
And he had to pay his payroll with his winnings. And for you communists out there who may see or listen to this later, as somebody who has had a career in business before we started doing this, I would like to make one thing very clear to you. If you're in a position where you're paying your employees with winnings from gambling, you're a shitty businessman.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say that.
He had a lot of...
I just wanted to... So, in regards to he described to Anthony Bourdain, the closest he got to calling himself a communist or a socialist was, he told Anthony Bourdain that he had a healthy suspicion of capitalism. Those are his exact words. In the 1950s, in the USSR and in East Germany, they wanted to root out what they considered corruptions of what they called, or they considered, American primitivism and a capitalist cultural imperialism, amoral American pop culture. But America's most valuable export, our culture, helped kill communism. Rock and roll helped kill communism. And since, as we have all seen in the news, the college protests, little socialist kiddies who are out pretending that they know what's going on in the world.
Can't spell.
Who can't spell.
Or pick out countries on a map.
Or pick out countries on a map, yes. Since communism is rearing its head again and coming back to life, it's time to kill it again. And I just want to help. The scene that I came up in, the music scene that I came up in Western Massachusetts, in the Pioneer Valley, is very anti-communist. Possibly the most well-known of those bands was All That Remains. And Phil Labonte, who heads All That Remains, is a very famously libertarian and anti-communist. And there are a lot of bands that kind of fall under that aegis in that scene. And there's a girl that we both follow from LA named Erin Miklau. And she's this sort of, I guess, punk influencer is the only way to describe her.
She's a journalist too. Like she interviews everyone. She basically, I'm not going to compare her to Nardwuar, but she's not that. She's not that quirky, but she's like a hot punk Nardwuar. You know what I mean?
Super into fashion. And
very into fashion, very into bands and musicians, like the people. Like she interviews bands. She's a journalist and does videos and edits stuff, and also is like an influencer as well.
But so we bring her up because Albini very vocally represented a sort of a toxic ideology that exists within the punk scene, despite what they would have you believe it's not the whole of the punk scene. But it has come to be a pretty dominant force in the punk scene. And a lot of the bands that Albini worked with had it as well. Nirvana had it. Kurt Cobain had a very fraught relationship with his own success after he achieved it.
Oh my God.
And, the protests in a lot of ways are centered out of a place that Kurt knew very well, which is Evergreen College in Olympia, Washington. Macklemore just released a protest song, one of the worst protest songs I've ever heard. It's really bad, called Heinz Hall. He's a graduate of Evergreen College. And Bikini Kill, Kathleen Hanna and Toby Vale, who Kurt dated for a while, they were graduates of Evergreen. And there's a very communist thing out there. It's a very popular ideology out west. This sort of ties into an article that we released not too long ago about Russian psyops in the United States. I think around 2018, the United States shut down the Russian embassy in Seattle because they felt that Russia was running a lot of operations out of that embassy. And I suspect, but have no evidence to support, that a lot of what I'm talking about has been heavily influenced by the FSB, which is the descendant of the KGB from the time period that I was just talking about. If you don't want to be successful, if you don't want people to hear you, why are you doing what you're doing? Yeah. It's the most asinine thing.
It is.
It's insane.
It's weird too, because he worked with so many, sorry to interrupt.
I just wanted to go back in punk a little ways, because in the beginning of the punk scene, there were communist influenced bands. MC5 was sort of a communist influenced band, and Iggy Pop. The Stooges actually initially started as sort of they were kind of a socialist commune. And Iggy, I have a quote here from him that I'll read. It's from an interview that he did with John Peel. And he said that when he started, he hadn't thought about the actual business of being in a band or the changes that life might bring. And quote, "Now I'm older and I need all the dough I can get. So I too am concerned about losing those lovely royalties. And I'm diversifying my income because a stream will dry up. I'm not here to complain about that. I'm here to survive it." End quote. And that's kind of the problem. You know, when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, it's hard to conceptualize what life's going to look like when you're 40, 50, 60, 70. And, well, the short version is communism doesn't work, which is why China's no longer communist. They're state capitalist. It's why Russia, the USSR, failed. It's why East Germany failed and the wall fell, because communism can't support itself.
It's that equality and poverty joke.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, we will all be equally poverty.
Equally poor. That's how it works.
Yeah.
But so Erin Miklau, who we mentioned a minute ago, she got jumped at a show in LA. She got beat up. I'm not going to mention the band because I don't want to give them attention, but I would describe them as sort of commie adjacent. None of their songs that I saw strictly promote communism, but they seem like commie types, I'll say. And I just wanted to delineate this difference between the East Coast scene and the West Coast scene. There was a band, it was a hardcore punk band, who was on a compilation album. They weren't a Western Mass band, they were from Eastern Mass. They were called The Freeze. And the album that they were on, the comp album, was called This Is Boston, Not LA. And the title of the song is taken from their song, This Is Boston, Not LA. And the lyrics to This Is Boston, Not LA are, if you dance the same and dress the same, it won't be long till you are the same. You look the same and act the same. There's nothing new and you're to blame. This is Boston, not LA. This is Boston, fuck LA. And that kind of sums up how I feel as a Western Mass kid, a Pioneer Valley kid, I should say, because I grew up a lot in Connecticut in addition to Western Mass. But that's how I feel coming from that scene. This is Boston, not LA. Fuck you.
I love that so much. And my upbringing was so different. Like there really wasn't a punk scene because I grew up in the Middle East. So I love like meeting you and just being able to, it's weird being into music and punk and like having not grown up in it. Do you know what I mean? Well, I guess not, but yeah.
Part of the reason that I care about, I have deep connections to that scene. Not necessarily as a kid. As a kid, I was going to punk shows, hardcore shows. But as an adult now, I have, connections to a bunch of bands from that scene. I'm friends with a couple guys. He's not from a Massachusetts band, he's from Iowa. But I'm friends with a guy named Trevor who fronts a band called Buggy Lewis and the Rabbit Grenades, hardcore punk band. And he's friends with a guy named Jay Prozac, who fronts a pop punk band called the Prozacs. He's married to a girl that I went to high school with named Andrea, who fronts another band that they're both in called the Stilettos. I'm friends with the former bassist from the Prozacs, a guy named Kyle Carnage. Elliott Smith was in a post-hardcore band based in Amherst, Heat Miser. All That Remains, who I mentioned earlier, from Springfield, where I went to high school. There's a band from Chicopee, Mass., which is a town next door to Springfield, called the Acacia Strain. There's Orchid was from Amherst, Mass., Gangrene, and they had a great song called Killikami. They were another hardcore band. They're from Braintree, which is in Eastern Mass near Boston, not Western Mass. It's all Mass. You're all massholes. We're all massholes. And another band from Amherst, who they were like a folk punk band that Albini did work for, was called Cordelia's Dad. He worked on an album of theirs that came out in 1998 called Spine. And there's a, Killswitch Engage from Westfield, Bane from Worcester. I think I already mentioned Orchid from Amherst. And I think the Acacia Strain is now based in Albany, New York, where I was in bands in Hartford. So yeah, there's a lot of connection to the scene there for me. And as a kid who grew up in the music scene, I really hate the idea that there's a bunch of pedophiles who are preying on kids related in any way to the music scene. And that ties in directly to this story.
I never thought I'd say, wow, there are people worse than the Nazis who infiltrated the scene, but this is way worse.
You know, it's a really unpopular opinion, but for me, and I wouldn't have agreed with this when I was 20. I would have said, no, they're different. But I'm not 20 anymore. Fascists and communists are the same people. They're two sides of the same coin. They're authoritarian shitheads who want to control what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to say, what resources you're allowed to have access to, as opposed to the unfettered, relatively unfettered freedom that we all enjoy now.
I'm just reading the comments. There's a lot of
Go ahead.
shit. Well, Yuri Brezmenov was brought up by Lazul, and we
Yeah, I've mentioned him quite a few times in articles that we've put out.
Yuri Brezmenov is so fascinating. We, even together multiple times, have watched his long interviews after defecting from the USSR and his time in the KGB.
I learned about Yuri from another musician friend of mine who's based in North Carolina. I wonder if that's my buddy. I wonder if he's watching. That might be why I mentioned him. I don't know. But yeah.
And then what We Are Vultures, Black Flag.
Yes.
Love Black Flag.
Yep, Black Flag.
Absolutely. Henry Rollins. But did you have anything else with the intro?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Albini ties into this, and it's not mentioned in our article, The Problem with Steve Albini, which is in the description of this if you want to read it. We strictly stick to the child sexual abuse stuff, but that's another issue with Steve Albini that I wanted to bring up in this, because it wasn't something that bothered me when I was a 20-year-old Steve Albini fan, but being a little older, I now see it as an issue. That he's contributing to this idea that these kids have that had his business on the brink of bankruptcy for 30 years, where he's making his payroll with poker winnings. That's not, good practice.
It really is like, oh, you're such a poser, you sold out or whatever. Why would you not want to why would you not want to be successful? Like, if you want to continue to put music out, you know, you need, I
don't know anything about Albini's healthcare But it occurred to me as we were prepping for this that if he had been better with money, if he had taken those royalties that he was entitled to from Bush and Nirvana, he might have been able to afford to see a fucking cardiologist and not died of a heart attack at 61. Maybe he did see a cardiologist, I don't know. But I got put on heart meds in my mid-30s. So he smoked for a very long time like I did, like a lot of kids in the music scene do. And I'm sure that contributed to his heart disease that he obviously had to be having a heart attack at 61.
I mean, I feel like something like that is, unless it was drug related, I mean,
smoking's bad for your heart. Don't smoke.
Yeah, don't. We both finally quit. We both smoked for years. Yeah, but that's preventable.
It is.
So,
heart disease, you just take a little pill every day. No problem. I almost had a heart attack a couple of years ago. Went to the doctor, got put on heart meds. I'm fine. My dad, about the same age, got put on heart meds. He's never had a heart attack. My great uncle Harry, on the other hand, died at 45 of a heart attack. He existed at a time where it wasn't common to get put on heart meds. Fortunately, my grandfather, his brother, after he survived his first heart attack, he got put on, at the time, nitroglycerin is what they gave you for heart meds. I don't get that, which is sad because, it'd be fun to play with. But, yeah. Anyway, you want to get into the sex abuse stuff?
Yeah. So, warning, because this is graphic and sick.
Yeah,
and
this is
pedophiles, really very, very young girls. Awful shit. And it's so sad because you think Steve Albini, we mentioned a few before, but like he was a recording engineer. He worked with like the Pixies, like PJ Harvey, Bush, the Breeders, Nirvana,
Jesus Lizard, Veruca Salt.
Yeah.
McCluskey.
Cheap Trick.
Love. McCluskey's one of my favorite bands. Cheap Trick. And just a ton of other bands. I mean, an endless list of bands.
Yeah, and his studio is super cool too. We probably shouldn't get into all that.
No, let's get into it. Let's talk about everything.
I love how he built it, like connected to his house, but like the floorboards and the base of the building wasn't connected. He was so weird about sound. And like, I don't know, I feel like some people, like he was just a special audio engineer. There was something about his brain and like,
I think he got
very sensitive to sound, but he built the whole thing out of clay.
I think he got that idea for the chamber from Phil Spector, who's another true crime related story that we could do at some point in the future. But Phil Spector is one of the only engineers I've ever read about who had, in his studio, he built this resonating chamber under the studio. And a lot of people think that resonating chamber was responsible for Phil Spector's sound. He used a lot of microphone bleed as well to produce something he called the wall of sound. But a lot of people think that resonant chamber had a lot to do with that sound that he got as well. And Albini never said that he was influenced by Spector, but those are the only two engineers I know who designed studios that include a resonating chamber beneath the studio.
It's just fascinating. He did a lot of weird shit. I know a lot of engineers do weird stuff. Like there's stories of like Serge Tankian hanging upside down in his bathroom. You know what I mean? Steve Albini would like walk around on stilts, but like
supposedly
there was really something about him that this was so heartbreaking. Like it literally brought me to tears. And I usually don't like people that I love will die and I'm like, oh, that's so awful, a huge fan. But with Steve, it's like 10 times more heartbreaking because we're fans and this is sick. Like, he's like basically a rape apologist.
I have listened to multiple times. I have listened to every lecture that Steve Albini has ever given on the subject of audio engineering. If it's out there, I've heard it more than once. I've read most of his essays that are available. His most famous one is called The Problem with the Music Industry. And the title of this is an allusion to that, The Problem with Steve Albini. He wrote The Problem with the Music Industry about the music industry being predatory towards bands. And so I thought it was a fitting allusion to this story about child sexual abuse.
I mean, it's something that made me like him because, fuck, I don't know what I did to my voice, but
So do your best. You're talking a lot.
I like that he basically went after these big studios and talked about the horrible deals that these record companies were signing with people, where there's that famous interview with Nirvana, and someone asked them, they were like, so I bet you guys are like super rich, you make a lot of money. And Dave Grohl was like, I mean, we get like per diem.
There's a famous story about Kurt where one of his friends was kind of ribbing him a little and said, it must be nice to be a big, rich rock star. And Kurt was homeless at the time still. The money had started to roll in, but he hadn't gotten any of it yet. And he was sleeping in the back of his Valiant.
Yeah.
And he said, I wouldn't know, I'm sleeping in my car.
Like.
But there's this thing in the punk scene that Albini kind of representative, that being somehow cool or desirable. I've been homeless. I slept on a park bench. It's not cool to sleep in your car. It fucking sucks to sleep on the street, especially if you're a kid in Massachusetts. Sleeping on a park bench in December was not fun.
Luckily, I've never been homeless, but I mean,
I was a teenager. I had a rough
dire
home life.
straits and different.
I mean, there were places I could have gone. I just didn't think of it. I just left the house and I didn't, just wandering around the city.
But let's get into this shit. Who should we start with? There are two specific people that we're going to be talking about. One is not in prison anymore, and the other is still in prison. There's Soto.
Well,
Peter Soto.
before we get into that, Albini himself, in the final Big Black Tour diary from their final tour in 1987, which he published in Forced Exposure number 13, he literally advocates for child pornography. I'm going to read this. It's in our article. You can go look at it. There's a scan from the Forced Exposure.
Actually going to show.
He says, jaded as I am, I can't help but flip seeing a girl and guy of 12 or 13 tops ramming Martell bottles up each other's, I'm going to tail off there. These are not the Dutch equivalent of abused trailer park kids. They look to be in excellent health and seem to be honestly enjoying this. Makes all the conventional arguments against this kind of thing seem really silly. They're kids. Kids like to play with their own and other people's privates. They're just being photographed at it. Now, people who get a voyeuristic charge out of watching them, like me, I guess, well, we've got some grip on reality problems. Yes, you do.
Some of this shit is super nasty. Like it's.
So in the very neck, this gets into what Victoria was leading into. In Forced Exposure number 7/8, he promoted a zine called Pure, put out by a man named Peter Sotos, who he described as a close personal friend up to the modern day. I think the last time was in 2021. He never stopped defending Peter Sotos. Peter Sotos, as I mentioned earlier, was the very first person who was arrested and sentenced under child pornography laws in the United States. He was arrested in December of 1985, and for the same magazine that Albini is promoting in this thing that I'm reading you, he describes the cover of Peter Sotos' Pure as, quote, a guy holding open a toddler's puny hole. This is so fucking disgusting.
It is.
So his spuzz can dribble out. The girl is past crying. She is destroyed. Now, I have to interject here as somebody who was into the shock stuff when I was a kid. This is way beyond.
Like, look at some of the imagery that Pure magazine has. Like, there are images on here of children that it's just so sickening. Like, I don't even know where to begin. It's basically like open child porn.
So Sotos was arrested in December 1985 on 2 counts of manufacturing and possessing child pornography because a copy of Pure was found by Scotland Yard in Edinburgh in the home of a suspect in a series of brutal child abductions, murders, and grave robbings, and Scotland Yard forwarded the material to law enforcement in the United States, and they arrested Peter Sotos.
He was actually an article. Sorry, did I interrupt?
You did, but that's okay. Go ahead.
An article came out about him where he was described as the modern de Sade. Like, that's not a compliment. When someone compares you to the Marquis de Sade, that's not a compliment.
So the magazine contains pictures that, according to State Inspector Jeremy Margolis, he described them as, quote, extolling and promoting child sexual murder, bestiality, and sexual torture. And he described the magazine, and I share his opinion on this, as, quote, the most disgusting I've ever seen.
I agree.
They found a third, when they arrested Sotos, they found he had published 2 issues of Pure, and they found a third, which was unfinished, featuring the abduction and sex crime killing of a girl named Melissa Ackerman, a 7-year-old from Illinois. And when they searched his apartment, they did not find a mailing list for Pure. It's unknown where he kept that, but they didn't find it.
He also put out a book, if I have that right, called Total Abuse. And it's like a collection of some of his writings. So it's from Pure, and then Tool and Parasite. And it's a photo of a child on the cover. Like, it's just it's so creepy.
So Sotos pled guilty, and he received a suspended sentence, which is awful to think about. This stuff was, to a degree, this was more normalized then than it is now. It wasn't considered normal, but it was more normalized. There was a famous porn star named Tracy Lords, who was 15 when she appeared in Penthouse in the 80s, and there were Playboy playmates who were under the age of 18.
It was the 80s.
It was a regular thing in the 70s, 60s, and 50s for teenagers to appear in Playboy.
In the article, we have a newspaper clipping.
The article's in the description. If you want to click on it, you can go see all the visuals very easily. But 7 years after he received his suspended sentence for the disgusting material that he was publishing, Steve Albini produced an album for Peter Sotos called Buyer's Market. And Buyer's Market is a series of spoken word collages that's made from audio samples taken from interviews of parents and the actual children victims. Sorry, this makes me so angry. The victims of these crimes. Albini, in 2016, in a Reddit AMA, said this about producing Buyer's Market. Somebody asked, how did you end up producing his album Buyer's Market? What was Peter like? And Albini said, Peter is an old friend. I've known him 30 years or so. I'll help him do whatever he wants to do, from wash his car to edit an album. I'm never quick to judge a person based on superficial reading of creative output. Peter Sotos is a lovely fellow whom I trust implicitly.
I just can't imagine, like, oh, that's just Peter. Like,
so
what?
The other guy, Chris Hall, early in 2024, I'd already been working on this story, but early in 2024, a source reached out to me on Twitter with some interesting information, which was in 2018, a member of the Electrical Audio Forum, who went by the handle Bad Comrade, was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison for producing child pornography and trafficking minors. And all trace of him ended up being deleted from the forum, and the forum itself was then taken down and moved from Electrical Audio's website to a new hosting provider. Now, I don't know why that happened, but I find the timing very suspect. And that's why I hadn't published the story. I was still trying to develop the story. But in light of Albini's death, I decided to just publish everything I had. So I just finished everything up and we put it out.
Yeah, we were trying to find, I went on the Wayback Machine and was looking for specific posts from Chris Hall. His username is Bad Comrade.
But that's all gone too.
It's gone. Like, I couldn't find it. I found Bad Comrade's account name, but that was it. It was like his profile, and then there was some posts, but there was like mass. It really just seemed like they cut out a whole year almost of posts by him.
Hall's crime was uncovered when one of his victims, who allegedly, according to my source, was the child of another Electrical Audio forum member who went missing from her home in Michigan. Detectives found emails between the girl and Hall's email address, which is the same name, badcomrade@gmail. They searched his house. They discovered a collection of child porn that included over 7,000 images and videos of minors. They identified dozens of sexually exploited children, some of whom were under the age of 12 when the images were created. 30 of those victims, or nearly 30, submitted statements in court in advance of his sentencing to talk about the harm that was caused to them by people like Chris Hall. And sorry, again, this stuff makes me so mad. So Hall would set up sexual encounters. He did this for this girl, supposedly. He would take photos of them, he would post them on Craigslist, and then he would essentially pimp them out to other adults and himself. He took video and photos during the encounters. Albini never responded to any comments made in reference to this. I scavenged all this stuff from various places on the internet in addition to my source. He blocked people on Twitter routinely for making comments about this. He never addressed it. He never said anything about it. He didn't block me, but he also never answered me. I asked him multiple times for comment, no response.
Another thing that Chris Hall did is he not just pimped girls out online, but he also, to get girls, he would have them, if I remember correctly, he would have them write property of CH on their bodies, and then they had to take pictures of themselves as their like application or whatever and send them to him. So he I don't know if he then hired, I don't know how that worked, but it was part of his process. So he has this collection of images of very young girls who has a property of Chris Hall written on their bodies. It's just
of CH.
It's CH, yeah. I wonder what that stands for. Do you know what I mean? But it's really sickening. And what normal person, or any of us, if any of us had a friend and we discovered that this is the kind of thing that they were doing, you better believe I would not stand by them. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm not turning
I wouldn't back them up. No, I would absolutely turn them in. Well, I guess.
And while we're on that topic, if anybody from any of the music scenes out there, if you don't feel comfortable talking to the police, but if you have more information about this, please reach out to us. There's contact information in the description. You can email us. We'll protect your identity.
We really have been, especially Parker, has been researching this story for over a year. We weren't even going to put it out until we could find more information.
No, I wanted to develop more information because I didn't just want to put out a hit piece on Steve Albini. But since he's dead and we can get quite a bit of views on this now, if you're out there, if you have information about any of this, about Bad Comrade, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
Or the police if you feel comfortable doing that. But if there's some kind of ring associated with the Electrical Audio Forum, I'd like to uncover it and send those people to prison where they belong.
Absolutely.
They can go join their buddy Chris.
Who knows where he is? I hate
He's
how
in federal prison.
He is, but it's part of the federal system that it's very difficult. You would have to go to each individual state and search his name because there's not they're constantly moving pedophiles and other people with crimes that put them at high risk for being, murdered in prison and to have the shit beat out of them for being a pedophile. So their I hate this, but their identity, the location of the inmate tends to be
hard to find.
Yeah, hidden.
So for his part, Peter Sotos has also reportedly, quote, bragged about owning volumes of child porn beyond what he was arrested for, and said that sales from his books, go directly towards funding child pornographers. And he also claims he repeatedly raped his older sister when he was a teenager. In an interview with Mel Magazine in 2021, Steve Albini added this to his public comments on Sotos. He said, quote, "It's hard for me to articulate, but there's a friend of mine, Peter Sotos, who's written extensively about abuse and murder and things of that nature. A lot of his writing is extremely difficult to read. It's repellent. You're brought into the mind of a sadist pretty convincingly. And I feel like that experience, reading that stuff, is shocking to your core in the way that the horrors of the reality of those things should be. Whereas this sort of Nancy Grace bombshell tonight in the child murders of that sort of show business softening of the impact of it, sort of turning it into a fucking board game and turning it into a police procedural where there are heroes and villains and you're rooting for people. That whole thing has turned these horrible, monstrous, atrocious things into just another kind of soap opera. That stuff is embarrassing for our culture. Steve, I know you're dead, but you're embarrassing for our culture. Your support of child predators is embarrassing for the culture of the music scene.
It makes me wonder how much he could have stopped. Because he never turned his friend in.
I have to say, selling a zine of child pornography is not somehow morally superior or equivalent to a commercial news show that you feel is too, child predators are villains. They're the closest thing. I don't really believe in the concept of good and evil, but the closest thing in this world that I can identify to evil are adults who prey on children.
Adults who hurt children and adults who hurt animals. So, it's the things that I just cannot.
Here's more Albini adds condescendingly in that interview with Mel Magazine. In our circles, nothing was off limits. So it took a while for me to appreciate that using abusive language in a joking fashion was still using abusive language. And it was genuinely shocking when I realized there were people in the music underground who weren't playing when they were using language like that and who weren't kindred spirits. They were in fact awful and only masquerading as intellectuals. That was one of many wake-up moments. To me, this all seems very performative, and
it does.
We'll kind of get into that a little bit more. He had adopted this kind of, sometime in the last 10 years, he kind of came around to this, he'd been heavily lamenting what he saw as fascism in his role as a sort of left liberal, faux radical gatekeeper of alternative culture. He was courted on Twitter, now X, by people like Jason Isbell and someone who I've had a lot of conflicts with, who I'm going to describe as that guy from Eve 6, a fake punk band who were explicitly a pop band in their day. They're on the soundtrack for American Pie, because you can't get more punk than being on the soundtrack for American Pie.
Yeah.
Steve liked to call Ted Nugent a serial child rapist. If you look at the article, at the very end of the article, I have a series of tweets, and there's even more than I included. There's probably dozens of instances of Steve Albini referring to serial child rapist Ted Nugent. And I find it interesting that he had a friend who was literally convicted of publishing child abuse material.
Yep.
But he made these provocative statements about Ted Nugent, who I don't think is a good guy. I don't know that he's a bad guy, but he did what several other rock stars have done, and he got
Pedophile.
You're talking about someone who's not Ted Nugent. While I'm talking about Ted Nugent, it might be confusing to people.
Yeah, you were talking about his friend, Peter.
I understand, but for the people who listen to this later, because I'm turning it into a podcast, they're going to hear me talking about Ted Nugent, and they're going to hear you go, pedophile. And they're not going to have any frame of reference for the fact that you're holding a picture up to the screen.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify, if you're listening later, she's talking about Peter Sotos and not Ted Nugent.
Yes, I was holding up a picture, my bad.
Now, I'm not, even though I was accused of this by a couple people earlier on Twitter, I'm not a huge Ted Nugent fan. I don't love his politics. He's kind of a weird guy. He did something that several other rock stars have done, which is he got guardianship over a minor so that he could marry her. And I have another article about that I'll publish in a couple days, talking about some of the other musicians who have done this. But I do like Stranglehold. It's hard not to like Stranglehold. If you're a guitarist, you probably know what I'm talking about. Stranglehold by Ted Nugent is an amazing song. Whatever you think of Ted Nugent, Stranglehold.
That's another thing. Like Steve Albini dying, we were just talking about our favorite songs from like
Bad Penny.
Bad Penny's great. I love Big Black and Shellac, like both of them.
Prayer to God.
Yeah, Prayer to God.
The Squirrel song is one of my favorites.
Prayer to God is my favorite Shellac song.
I think I like Bad Penny the most. That was a Big Black song, I believe, not Shellac. But
I remember discovering songs about fucking in high school. I was like, what is this? I loved it. And it's so upsetting that it's all, I guess that's just part of growing up and learning more about people.
Albini, interestingly, in a way that doesn't strictly tie into this, but I do mention it in the article, he also supported supported puberty blockers for kids who are diagnosed trans. And there isn't a lot of great evidence to support its use. An accusation that I've left up in the comments on the article that I was somehow being anti-trans by saying that, but I included a link to a study in there called the Cass Review that talks exactly about this exact thing. And there is not good evidence to support the use of puberty blockers in children or to attempt to change their gender. I don't want to get into all that, but Steve, I'll read you the tweet. He says, "Puberty blocking is absolutely the most safe, cautious, responsible, reversible first step in trans care, trans adolescent care. You don't know this because you've decided to know nothing about it. Please take a few minutes to learn about the relevant care before talking about it. Look into it a little, and you'll see using puberty blockers is already a compromise. The more comprehensive gender-affirming care is deemed too much by these same people. They will move their objection to score points to wherever the standard of care ends up." So the Cass Review they looked at 100 or close to 100, it's like 99 scientific studies on the use of puberty blockers and found, quote, "The evidence base supporting early puberty suppression is of poor quality and unclear. They also said the effects on the cognitive and psychosexual development are unknown based on existing research, and that evidence of bone health being compromised by the treatment exists." So contrary to what Steve said, not safe based on the information we have, not cautious, not responsible, and I'm not going to go into the science stuff, but not necessarily reversible either.
No, and I mean, they can be reversible if you take them for a short amount of time and change your mind, but that is a very important period that is a short, like a small window where someone goes through puberty. And, well, if you start fucking around with it, you're not going to develop properly. I mean, the human brain doesn't develop until the age of 25. I hate Steve's whole like performative thing about caring about people and shit when he's a rape apologist. He has friends who are pedophiles.
To get off this and go into something else.
Yeah.
I can't read the whole thing because we'll get kicked off of YouTube. But in addition to Rape Man, Steve was known for a lot of performative racism.
Yeah.
He was criticized in a 2012 Vice article called "But Can You Do a Kickflip, Steve Albini?" By a guy named Anthony Pappalardo, who runs Artless Industria, Substack blog. And I can't read the whole thing, but if you go to our Substack is censorship free, and I've included the full excerpt, the links in the description. You can go look at it yourself. He had another band, in addition to Rape Man, called Run.
N-word.
There you go. Run. They did a song called Pray I Don't Kill You, F.A. You can figure out the rest of those letters yourself, I'm sure. Or you can go look at them in the Substack article that we published yesterday. He said that he wanted to call Big Black's second EP in the August 1986 issue of Spin, Hey, N-word. And he ranted against beatbox disco rap as, quote, an aesthetically empty music buoyed by white guilt. And Anthony Pappalardo also writes that later that year in Forced Exposure, he said, quote, I don't give two splats of an old Negro junkie's vomit for your politico-philosophical treatises, kiddies, because apparently in the hierarchy of junkie vomit, Negro puke is the worst. So he's talked about a lot of aspects of the criticisms of his performative edgelording, but not what we just discussed. He refused to really comment on it.
That's what's so bizarre.
But in a series of tweets in October 2021, Albini can be seen embracing the same philosophy that Pappalardo quotes him dismissing as white guilt in his essay on the aging punk rocker. Far from the days of Rape Man and under heavy social pressure to conform, Steve went full performative woke. I wrote in the article, perhaps he saw the writing on the wall, because obviously he did. But he wrote, I'm going to read you his tweets, which I also included in the article. He says, for myself and many of my peers, we miscalculated. We thought the major battles over equality and inclusiveness had been won, and society would eventually express that. So we were not harming anything with contrarianism, shock, sarcasm, or irony. If anything, we were trying to underscore the banality, the everyday nonchalance towards our common history with the atrocious, all while laboring under the tacit mistaken notion that things were getting better. I'm overdue for a conversation about my role in inspiring edgelord shit. Believe me, I've met my share of punishers at gigs, and I sympathize with anybody who isn't me, but still had to suffer them. But he never addressed what we talked about here. Never came up.
No, he has
blocked people who brought it up in his comments, or in my case, just didn't respond to them, just ignored them. What do you say?
Just that he has these quotes that he thinks are so like prophetic or something that make him look as if he's doing the right thing or he's on the side of the people. But then if you actually ask him about specific quotes where he's literally using the N-word in a non-ironic way to describe people, and also like if he gets asked about why like his friends who are pedophiles like Sotos or Hall, he just refuses. There's nothing about it. Like he won't talk about it. I just think that says a lot.
I love his music and I like his audio engineering. I like a lot of the bands that he worked with. But if you take that stuff out of the equation, he was basically a less talented Howard Stern.
Interesting.
Is what it is. I mean, he was. It's the same. It's literally the same like humor style or, maybe not Howard, maybe Bubba the Love Sponge, who was, I believe, fired for racist comments. Although I might be confusing him with someone else. There have been a couple of those shock types who were summarily dismissed from their positions for being race baity in their comedy stylings.
I thought his brief, he had a brief food blog as well.
He did.
Which didn't really go anywhere, but he became obsessed with baking bread and like making bread homemade and then slicing it perfectly. Like,
don't go look for that blog now, because it sort of still exists, but it's gone. And if you click on the link, it's going to bring you to a not safe website where you may get some kind of virus. Just FYI.
I don't know if it's on the Wayback Machine or not, but I remember reading his food blog like, oh my God. It had to, yeah. It was over 5 years ago.
In Vegas.
Yeah.
It was when we were living at Armin's.
Yeah, I remember finding it and being like, Steve Albini makes bread? What?
I remember you reading all that stuff and like showing me pictures of his food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was such a cool place. I love the sound as well. I remember talking about electrical audio because we lived in a place that was a loft.
We rented a pool house.
Yeah.
What do they call them out west? Casita. We rented a casita behind somebody's house. And it was clay, which Electrical Audio Studios also, he had Adobe Clay brought in to make his studio. And the best sound I ever had, there were no parallel walls. They were all rounded. Great for recording.
We later found a photo of Ozzy Osbourne standing at the exact same pool that we rented. We lived there for like a few months. And I was like, no way. It was so weird. I should post that. I should post this side by side.
You should absolutely post that.
I need to go find that and post that. That was such a great place.
That pretty much tails up what we have to read, but I guess we can go to the phones, as it were. By which I mean the YouTube comments here. Let's take a look at these.
Yeah. I saw some interesting things come in, but I haven't really.
I see somebody here saying that you're distracting and confusing.
They probably just think I'm super hot.
You are super hot.
Oh, it's because it's a Mac.
Oh, yeah.
That's why. Someone.
For the closest thing I will ever do to performative, racist, edgelording, PC master race.
For real though.
Fuck you, none your business. It's not clickbait, as you probably heard. It's actual disgusting child abuse and support for child abusers, child rapists, sexual predators of children. It's not clickbait.
I'm really so upset hearing so many people from the music scene and just the music world and punk, like, giving us shit for talking about this. Like, fuck you. And I know blah, 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 YouTube, whatever. I'm not going to censor myself when talking about this. It's never okay to support people who are pedophiles. It's not okay. And I really don't care what you think. It just makes me think that people who don't like our coverage of that, I'm like, you're either a troll or you're an asshole / pedophile, or you're just the kind of, I guess this is the asshole category, the kind of person who supports like Aaron Micklaw getting punched in the face. Like
Steve Albini fans are the absolute last people who should be telling us to like have some respect. You mean like Steve did for everybody? Like Steve had respect? Is that how we should be?
Yeah, Zami Adams hanging around with self-confessed sadist Peter Sotos says it all. It really does. Like if you meet somebody like that, you have the choice to not befriend them and to never speak to them again or turn them into the police, or you can say nothing for decades while they put out child pornography. Like, and that's what Steve Albini did, and it's honestly heartbreaking.
Here's an example of Albini having some respect. Reagan died an old man, demented and unaware. He presided over and caused extraordinary suffering, and ushered in the self-righteous and callous greed, xenophobia, racism, and bigotry of the modern GOP. He was an utter, unredeemed piece of shit on his tomb.
Whenever people are like, have some respect, I'm like, I wish I could go through your social media and just look through your tweets, because I know I would find some disrespectful shit in there.
What else we got?
Someone said, MSG said, nice fender. I guess they mean your shirt.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I have a Squire over there, but that's...
I have several...
Wait, no, I have a Fender.
I have several Fender guitars. I have a Gretsch bass, which is a Fender-owned company, but it's not a Fender, it's a Gretsch.
Wow.
And I have an Ibanez bass. I used to have a Fender P bass. I didn't like it very much. It was not comfortable for me to play. So I sold it and I bought an Ibanez and then the Gretsch, which is a short scale. It's a lot more comfortable to play. Hey, buddy. I booked your Snoop. There you go. Good boy. What else we got?
You've been locked up with Catherine Knight.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, wait, you are from Australia? Like, you're in Australia now. What? Okay, Catherine Knight murdered her husband and then, like, was cooking some of him and ate some of him. Didn't she, like, hang up body part? Like, hang him up in their kitchen or something? Like, oh, my God. Catherine Knight is terrifying.
By the way, if you see me throwing stuff in my mouth, they're Altoids, who we're not sponsored by, but if you're Altoids and you see this and you want to sponsor a true crime channel, reach out. What else we got?
The government always protects pedos. That must have been about our conversation about the prison system.
Yeah, I think so.
I really like, when we talk about this shit, people get so like, oh, anti-trans. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if you're trans.
But I don't hate trans people. I don't care what your issues may or may not. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Live your life. Do what you want. If you're an adult, do what you want.
This from Tate Friends about using replacement words for the algorithm so we can make more money. I really like, I'm so anti-censorship.
Yeah.
It's just beyond, like, I refuse.
That's why we started Murder Pop Magazine, because it gives us a place where we can talk censorship free, where people can support our work directly, which YouTube sort of allows, but since YouTube is engaged in mass censorship, I don't want to funnel money through the company and have them take a cut of it. So I'll gladly take their advertising revenues, the little bit of it that they share with us. But if you want to support our work, please subscribe to Murder Pop Magazine. We've given a lot of free subscriptions away, but if you can subscribe, if you can become a paid subscriber, you can help support our work. And
we also want to put out a documentary about the Delia Day case, death of Travis Anton.
It would be great to be able to do it ourselves without outside funding, although we're also working on securing outside funding. So whichever way that comes together, we'll get it made. But yeah, it'd be awesome if we can get the Murder Pop community to fund it. We can just put it up on Murder Pop Magazine for everybody, and we can release it on YouTube. I'd be happy to do that.
Too often, the true details of a socially famous person's real identity are hidden.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a facade that you have to sell. Yeah. Like,
are we from Chicago? No, I guess you missed it, but she grew up in the Middle East, in Egypt and the UAE primarily. Sorry to answer for you. And I grew up in the Pioneer Valley, Western Massachusetts, and the Hartford, Connecticut area.
I lived in Amman as well. Egypt and Amman were the same amount of time.
My family, I moved around, but prior to me, my family was always up in the New England region, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut. I actually have a Mayflower descendant. I have a Mayflower ancestor.
There's this movie that I found in high school called Tackle Course, and it was about Muslim punks. And it was such a weird movie, but I liked it. I thought it was interesting. And no one's seen it. No one has heard of that movie.
I answered this question already. Apparently you missed a lot, since I'm now answering a question for you that we've already covered for the second time. but it's not talking bad about the dead. It's telling the fucking truth. And the reason I didn't talk about it before this is because we were trying to further journalism is work. It's not just, hey, I got this information, I better hurry up and put it out there. You got to try and develop sources, research, find information. It's not just, somebody told me this, so I'm going to tell everybody.
I think if people watch our channel and like read what we write, it's very obvious that we don't do like clickbaity shit.
That was really aggressive, but I'm glad it was aggressive. 2 questions that we've already answered.
You want to see clickbait? No, I just want to like flash the screen.
What else we got?
Oh my God. Okay, so Apple sucks. Yes, it does.
I hate the idea. Telling the truth is never talking bad about the dead. It's just the truth. Am I supposed to lie and say he was a good dude when he was literally supporting child predators?
Hitler hated Jews.
Hitler's dead. Do you only say good things about Hitler? The man's dead, not here to defend himself. These are things he literally said. What's there to defend? He put it in writing. Go click on the article. It's in his words. This is all his words. It's not me saying it. He said it.
I feel like the fact that someone's dead doesn't.
I didn't tell him to defend Peter Sotos as recently as 2021. He did that himself.
Absolutely.
I can't speak for Steve, but I've never had a 30-year friendship with a child predator. Don't know why you would. Love to ask him. In fact, I did ask him. He didn't answer me.
Really?
Never got back to me.
Really insane. The friends you keep say a lot about you.
And the timing of shutting down the forum is sketchy, and the fact that
that's what I was going to say.
The fact that everything from Bad Comrade is not available on the Internet Archives because somebody requested it to be deleted is sketchy.
Yeah, like
it's all weird. If you can look up Murder Talk Radio and you'll be able to find our accounts really easy.
Yeah, Murder Talk Radio is our Facebook group, and then obviously like our accounts are connected to that.
Victoria Evans, Adam Evans. Or Parker Adam Evans.
Yeah, he goes by his middle name on there. I don't know if you want to say why. I think we both have.
My mom chased me off my main account.
Yeah.
She couldn't handle the truth. Sorry, Mom. The guy that asked me those weird questions says he cut John Wayne Gary's yard when he was young.
John Wayne Gary?
John Wayne Gary.
John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy.
I wonder sometimes people's usernames, I'm like, do you have a vanity plate? I feel like you do. You probably do. One question though, why talk bad
I already answered that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. They're not here to defend themselves.
I already answered that too.
It's so annoying. I'm like, he could have, but didn't.
Yeah, he could have. He chose not to answer us. Chose not to respond to me.
So
his choice.
Weird.
Albini said horrible things about people all the time.
Yes.
He insulted people all the time. So if his fanboys don't like it, well, I came from the punk scene too, and I asked him for a comment. He chose not to give me one. I don't care. Don't care. He enabled a child predator, more than one, and I don't care.
Rhodesian Ridgebacks. I was like, Rhodesian backs? Dogs? Like, I could not remember that. Thank you. Yes, Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Jimmy cracked corn, and I don't care.
That's pretty much, we went through all of the
pretty much
comments and everything, talked about Steve Albini. Go to the link in the description. You can read the full article with all the pictures and uncensored stuff. There's a lot more information on there that we didn't discuss.
Yeah, we're gonna take the audio from this, and sometime next week, the episode 3 of Murder Talk Radio went out this morning about the untold story of Delia Day, and this will go out as episode 4 sometime next week.
Oh, also a music video. One of our music videos is going to go on YouTube.
It's actually already on.
It is.
It's already on murderpm.com if you want to go see it. Our song Stoner Witch, which was inspired by another sort of, I don't think Albini ever worked with them, but I started writing this song. The idea for the title, I was listening to the Melvins album, Stoner Witch, and I was like, I'm going to write a song called Stoner Witch. And I came up with this story, and I wrote this song, and then she found some inspiration for the video, and we made this video. That was before the Israel Keys Life in Detail documentary just before.
Yeah.
Just before. So if you want to check that out, it'll be live on the YouTube, or it's on our magazine, murderpm.com.
I love the Melvins so much, and I had an opportunity to see them and didn't go because I got tickets for this dude that I was in a band with, and like we started seeing each other. I've told you the story before. I got these fucking tickets, and then he dumped me, like he, you know, and like then he didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks, and then he texted me the day of the show and was like, so can I get those tickets? I was like, fuck you, dude, go buy your own tickets. Like, and then I didn't go, and I'm so like annoyed at myself. Why didn't I go? I could have seen Buzz, and like, I think it was the Melvins and Napalm Death or something.
Steve did always have something to say about somebody. I remember another essay that he put out where he trashed a bunch of other Chicago bands, Urge Overkill, who have a song on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, a cover of a song, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. And if I'm remembering the essay right, I believe that he called them the Jefferson Airplane of the modern era. That was Steve's insult for Urge Overkill.
What a weird insult. The Love Witch. Great movie. Has anyone seen that? I really like that movie.
That was her inspiration for the video.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get back into it. Our lives have been insane. Maybe one day we'll talk about it. I don't know. But maybe.
But not right now.
No.
The movie was The Love Witch.
Yeah.
2016, I think.
Yeah.
Right? It's in the article on the Stoner Witch video. It's in there. You want to go look at it?
Starring Samantha Robinson, who, well, I know her in that, and then I know that she had a small role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I should look her up and see what she's doing. But that movie was so great. They really like flooded that set with light.
Tarantino connection to Pulp Fiction that I just mentioned.
Oh my God! Speaking of Pulp Fiction, what I was gonna say was Lysol. The Melvins have Lysol, Nirvana has bleach, and I'm like, we need to do an album and like pick a different cleaning supplies and like call it that.
That's funny. That's a funny idea.
Yeah.
Soap. It's called soap.
But what?
Purell.
I see. But like way too much.
I went to one of their Halloween shows, and I heard a great story about pissing off Jerry Only, because they came out. We were hanging around the parking lot after. I knew the security. It was just at the Webster in Hartford. We were standing around after, smoking cigarettes, and the Misfits came out, and he came up and he said, "How you guys like the show?" And I said, "It was great. It would have been even better with Danzig." And he like stormed off to their little RV that they had, and like slammed the little tin door that it has.
I just want to clarify that I like the Misfits, but I never really got into them in the sense that like I cannot name all the band members. You're asking about a song name. I don't know. What the fuck were we talking? Tarantino.
Yeah.
Oh, Tarantino. Did you guys know, weird fact, that if you look on the back of the In Utero album, there is a literal like thank you in fine print to Quentin Tarantino, because he originally offered the roles of the junkies in Pulp Fiction to Kurt and Courtney, and they turned it down, and I don't fucking know why. I guess they were too busy being junkies.
They didn't want to be seen as junkies, even though they were both drug addicts.
Weird.
What year did Pulp Fiction come out? The 94? 93?
I mean, Kurt died in 93, right?
94.
94.
He died right after my grandfather did.
I thought he died right after. Okay.
94. April 94.
94. Yeah.
Pulp Fiction came out in 94.
Yeah.
So just before that, Kurt and Courtney had a whole bunch of this stuff happen, and they almost lost their kid because of a Vanity Fair article about them being heroin addicts. So that's probably why they didn't want the role, and why they didn't want to be perceived as drug addicts, even though they both are literally well, Kurt's dead, and I don't think Courtney is actively a drug addict anymore, although I don't know. But
she acts like one. Maybe it's just because she's literally crazy. I love you, Courtney. Don't be mad.
I think she's more...
Not that she's watching this, but...
I think she's more into typo negative. They're not really in my...
But
they're not really in my purview.
I like typo negative, yes.
She's a little more metal, and I'm a little more punk rock.
I am obsessed with grunge as well. I could really listen to... If it's good, I'll listen to it. Like, I will listen to fucking opera.
At the time, a lot of people described grunge as a merger between metal and punk.
I love it. Punkettle. Monk.
I'm more into... I really love the Wipers, who were also a big influence on Kurt. Is This Real? It's a great song. I used to like Shellac a lot.
Great song.
My current relationship with the band Shellac is, shall we say, up in the air because of what you heard here on this podcast today. I'm normally a believer in separating the art from the artist, but I was so into Steve. He was such a big influence on me. In a lot of ways, I viewed him as a mentor. When I was 17, I was like, playing guitar, and I was writing songs, and going into a music studio was really expensive, and home recording hadn't really taken off yet the way it has now. And I started to get into trying to record myself. And so Steve is coming from that same scene and kind of growing the same thing. He used to record bands in like a little house. It was just sort of a natural fit, and I viewed him as a mentor in a lot of ways. So this deeply impacted me in a negative way.
Oh my God, Wolf Mother. Yes. I love Wolf Mother. They're so great. They also did a great, usually covers aren't better than the original. And in this instance, the cover's still not better than the original, but their cover of Joker and the Thief is amazing. It's so good. I love Wolf Mother. They're great.
This is in the article that we put up for our music video, Stoner Witch, but she built the set for the music video that we made. She spent almost a month building it in this little stairwell landing in the house that we were living in. And we recorded the song in our living room space that was right off of that landing. And you wouldn't believe it to look at it, but that was a tiny space. It was the size of a typical stairwell landing. And if you look at it, it looks more expansive than it is. With this foreknowledge, you'll probably be able to tell. But I think if I just watched it and I didn't know, I don't think I would realize that it was as small of a set as it was.
Very small. The way we shot it, it looks like...
If I had to guess,
it looks like a whole room.
It's like 30 square feet, probably.
Yeah, it was very small. Essentially, I hung all of these tapestries to make this little tent inside.
Like a room within a room.
Yeah. And then we had to make sure, because they didn't go all the way to the ceiling, to not get this. We got the ceiling in a couple shots. And I had to crop it, and I was like, fuck.
It was hand shot. I shot it with a camera just like this. Not even like a gimbal or anything, just literally by hand holding the camera. I went back and got a bunch of B-roll and stuff, but that set was so cool. I had so much fun doing that. It was a lot of fun. It was. And there's a rat in the video, and that was our pet rat. Splinter. I miss them. All right, I think we should wrap this up. What happened to Splinter? Old age. Yeah, rats only live for 2 to 3 years, but she was 3.5 when she died. It was weird because we had 4 rats, and actually I have an animal channel called Rat City. You can check it out if you want. YouTube.com/Rat City. So Splinter rats are very, very social, and I jokingly called her a sociopath. Most rats don't live for a long time if there aren't other rats around to keep them company. They just die. Yeah. Splinter, on the other hand, did the opposite. Splinter would always hide in the cage that we had for them, and after all of her siblings died, she became more social. She started like playing more. She seemed happier. She like came out and she was really social with us.
So
and she lived for like another year or something. She outlived every other rat we had by like a year and a half, a year. It was crazy.
I miss her so much. Rats are so sweet, and they're very smart as well.
They were surprisingly good pets. If you live in an apartment and you need a pet, get a rat.
Yeah.
Actually, get multiple rats because they don't like to be alone. Unless you get a crazy sociopath rat like we did, in which case, after the other rats die, they will suddenly turn into a social butterfly. All right, that's it for Murder Talk Radio episode 4, The Problem with Steve Albini. I will answer this real quickly. We're in Atlanta right now. We haven't been to a show in a long, long time, but yeah, I mean, I've played in local bands here in Atlanta.
I used to go to shows all the time. I had a lot of friends who were in different bands. Like, we met because I literally entered a band ad.
Yeah, that's how we met.
Like, that's how we met. But
shows at 529 at the Unicorn, Drunken Unicorn. I think 529 is probably my favorite local venue, but
Star Bar's
great.
The Earl, the Union. There's a few venues in Little Five Points.
I saw a band called what's that band called? The Ringo Starr.
Oh.
Is that their name?
Yeah.
They're great, local band. I don't know, I've seen quite a few. I used to go out to shows a lot, and I haven't been out to a show. And the last show we saw was for a major act. We went and saw A Perfect Circle, and who did they tour with?
I think, honestly, it was weird because I feel like they just toured.
No, it was somebody else. We saw 2 bands.
I don't remember. I don't remember who they toured with. But, Lakewood Amphitheater. I've been to so many shows at Lakewood. Atlanta.
Grindcore, huh? Do you ever heard of the Brooklyn band Fecal Corpse? It's going back a long way. They were like in the early 2000s, the band Fecal Corpse. It ties into the edgelording with Steve Albini, so it's okay that it came up. Fecal Corpse, I wasn't in the band, but one of my close friends was in the band. And I used to go and spend time in his apartment in Brooklyn. And they recorded this like sort of behind the scenes party footage. And I'm in the Fecal Corpse video. There's a scene of me doing the Blackie weather forecast from Family Guy. It's gonna rain.
I still need to see this.
I had just gotten dumped by this girl. And so I was really depressed the whole week. And I was just like drinking vodka the whole time. And I put on headphones and I went, and they had this big party and I didn't want to be social. So I went to the bathroom, the lights were off and I was just listening to music on my headphones. And they came up to me with the camera and you just see me.
I still need to see this video. Still haven't seen it. We've been together like 7 years.
Fecal Corpse had a lot of songs that Steve Albini would have liked, like I Fist Fucked a Martian, I Raped Your Girlfriend and She Gave Me the HIV. The guy who ran that band, I'm not going to say his name because I haven't talked to him in years, but I still consider him a close friend, and I don't want to blow up his shit. But he's like a preppy salesman now for a media company.
It's so fucking weird.
It'd be even weirder if you knew him.
Touring sucks in Australia because it's so far away. I have always wanted to go to Australia. You guys have some crazy true crime stuff, not to mention, like, you're like a continent
box of kangaroo
where a bunch of prisoners were just sent. Like,
one of my favorite, we have an Akita, and I watch videos of Akitas all the time, and there's a viral animal video from Australia of a kangaroo trying to drown an Akita, and the Akita owner goes out into the water and just pops him in the face.
Let go my dog. I can't do the Australian accent, but I like the way he said that. Let go my dog. Fucking weird. But Australia, I really want to go, and I love Brody Daly. Like, who doesn't?
Tim Armstrong.
I mean,
he used to love Brody Daly. Maybe he still does. He probably doesn't, but maybe he still does. All right.
Josh Homme.
That's it for us, Murder Talk Radio.